All right, and thank you for joining us wherever you may be in the world, morning, afternoon, or evening. And today's webinar is called 5 Smart Segment Examples to Create Personalized High-Performing Marketing Journeys. My name is Marion. I'm the CMO and Head of Growth here at Autopilot. And here in the studios is the one and only Michael Sharkey, the CEO and co-founder of Autopilot as well.
I'll take that intro. That's good. I like it. The one and only. I think that's the only time in my life I've been called the one and only. So I'm going to cherish this moment.
Cherish away. So before we get started, a few housekeeping items for today. First of all, feel free to ask questions anytime during this webinar. We do treat this more as a radio show than as a formal presentation. So we will be throwing in 2 polls so we can be a little more personalized in our own discussion. We'll be moderating questions throughout the session, both in the GoToWebinar panel, and also we're monitoring the Twitter hashtag #SmartSegments. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them up there, and if not answered during the session today, then someone from the team will follow up with you after the webinar.
Yeah, we are going to power through pretty quickly some examples today. So if you're a beginner or a more advanced user and you have specific questions, we will try and leave time at the end so we can get to those as well.
And lastly, the session is being recorded, and we'll send around a follow-up afterwards with links to the content from today. So we're in for a treat. We're getting, first of all, a sneak peek into a new feature that's currently in beta, which is Autopilot's new smart segments, straight from the maker. We'll also be sharing a framework that you can use to build out your own segmentation strategy. And then we're going to return back to our favorite fictitious e-commerce company, which if any of you have attended previous webinars or workshops of Autopilots, you may recognize, called Wine Time. And Mike's actually going to take us through 5 journeys that get increasingly segmented and personalized that show you how deep and one-to-one we can get with the combination of smart segments and the data that we pass into smart segments to do personalized journeys through Autopilot. So at this point, we're going to take a break and we're going to do a quick poll and get a sense of level of experience of everybody on here. So I'm going to fire this out right now. What is your level of experience with marketing automation? And if you could please just take 5 seconds to select whether you've never used it, whether you've used it for less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, or over 3 years. We're getting an amazing split right now of about 10% have never used it, a third less than 1 year, a third 1 to 3 years, and about 15% over 3 years. All right, we've had 100% of attendees vote, so thank you all for being so responsive, and we're going to keep going. So basically, we've got about 2/3 of the webinar, or actually 80% of the webinar is 3 years or less, and about a third less than a year so far. 15% never used it, 38% less than 1, 31% 1 to 3 years, and 15% over 3 years. Good. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving here. And so let's talk a little bit about why segmentation and why is this important. Smart segments enable you to target specific audiences with personalized content and messaging, and that in turn is where you get the magic out of automation. It drives results and a better customer experience. It's the underpinnings for the right person, right time, right message that we all read about, whether it's on blogs or experience and practice. The reality is it works, and it works incredibly well, and with Autopilot we're really focused on making that easy to do. We're going to talk through that today. So, a couple points on this. We did a study last year that included a survey of over 1,200 consumers, and we're really diving into the current understandings and expectations of consumers around personalization. We found that 72% of respondents are flat out turned off by generic marketing these days. And then secondly, consumers are 4 times more likely to respond to your content if it is personalized. And lastly, only 20% are actually turned off if you engage based on prior browsing history or even purchasing history. So there isn't that creepy factor, assuming you practice with best practices, that you may be concerned about if you get overly personal. Really what this shows us is we need to be engaging directly in a more one-to-one manner. Other research out there in the industry, 2015 research by Infosys found that 86% of shoppers who've experienced personalization believe it's influenced them, and 59% of those say it has a noticeable effect on purchasing. And for many of us in the SaaS or the B2B space who've been practicing sort of one-to-many personalized marketing for many years now, we've recognized over and over that in automating our manual tips and our outreach emails through automation, and doing so differentiating based on where someone's coming from, how they're using your product, what their key needs are, or whether they've purchased your product or not, you can actually drive higher and higher engagement and eliminate those "why are you emailing me right now" type of responses from customers. So all of this is driven through the ability to identify the right target at the right time and then send the right message.
I think the other thing with all of these analytics around personalization as well, at the end of the day, it's all the kind of stuff you expect. And I think one of the things I see people often doing at these growth hacking conferences and things I've been attending lately is talking about all the sort of got your tricks and ways they can outbound and do all of this marketing that, you know, to be quite frank, isn't really that remarkable. And I think that the challenge marketers face is this pressure to drive more leads and drive more growth and revenue in their organization. And so sometimes you sort of revert to these, what you think are silver bullet tactics, and you then start to go back to sort of batching and blasting and pray and spraying techniques that might feel like they work initially, but the long term, they just sever relationships with customers. And I think the way I always think about personalization is, you know, how do I as a customer or a prospect want to be treated, and how do I want to be communicated with? And when you think about that, it's just so logical to me that, you know, being personalized and someone knowing where you're at in the customer journey is so critical. And I think that is really what we want to show you today as well as we go through here.
I think it's a great point. So let's jump into how we go about doing this, and then we're going to turn this from slides into product in a few minutes here and show you and actually build it out. But first of all, it's important to have a framework to think through how do you develop the segments that in turn allow you to personalize your journeys, your messaging, your marketing. It starts with segmenting based on the right people, and to do that, you need to have, first of all, the ability to use filters and create segments of people who meet certain criteria, and then secondly, the richness of that ability to segment increases within the environment and the data that you're passing in around about your contacts and about your data. So what we're seeing here is a graph that shows on the vertical axis levels of personalization in terms of how you engage people, from on the low end very generic to on the high end highly personal. And then what we've built out is a view that maps out an increasingly rich view of your customer or your contact based on the types of data that you're passing into your database, whether that's Autopilot or any other platform for that matter that enables you to capture and build out user content. So the first here is demographic data. So the first key piece is if you import data into your email marketing database, for example, you'll typically have a number of fields included. What's their industry, their title, their gender, their geography. Using demographic information coupled with dynamically inserted fields like blank name for your industry, you're able to obviously offer different types of messaging to different segments and basically segment A versus B. You can do your B2C versus your B2B audience, for example. Now, if you add on top of that engagement data, which is the second class of data, so this would be marketing engagement like web visits, email clicks, or form completions, all of which is available with the Autopilot pixel, which is added to your site, although other sites will have similar site types of services available. Then you can start to factor in whether or not that B2C user who comes from a certain geography has actually visited your site and clicked an email about a local and relevant offer. Once you know that about a specific person, you can now follow up with a specific engagement tied to that. So that's using the engagement data. Now, if we start to factor in or connect in more data outside of your core automation database, we start to get into a third class of data, which will be CRM, integrated CRM data, whether it's a Salesforce, which is natively built into Autopilot, or Shopify, or some other service for more of an e-commerce use case. You can now start to factor in sales interactions and ownership of accounts and status of leads into your messaging and targeting, including the other components that we just mentioned a moment ago, the demographics and the engagement. And then lastly here, and you get to the ultimate level of personalization, that really occurs when we start to map in application usage and activity data from your own product, for example, or other apps that you're integrated with. You know, Eventbrite for capturing event registrations, or site analytics from third-party sites where people have been interacting. You pass all those events into your automation platform, and now you can get highly targeted messaging that's basically approaching a one-to-one status.
I think also just touching on that, especially around demographic and engagement information around contacts, there might be some people listening thinking, how do I even get demographics like industry or age or location? When I'm just collecting subscribers on my website, or I have an older database where, a lot of that data wasn't available to them. And so one of the things that, there's a few ways of getting that data if you don't already have it, using services like Full Contact that'll actually take your database and enrich it. And we have that natively built into Autopilot. So if you are using Autopilot, you kind of get that data to begin with, which actually gives you a basis for that segmentation. And then there's also, like you just said, around the engagement on your forms, thinking through some strategic questions that you can improve that demographic information over time. So subtly asking them questions on different landing pages or forms on your website that are really important to future segmentation. And I think that's just thinking through those sort of I/O questions that you can ask that'll help you segment in the future when you think about demographic and engagement data is really critical. And sort of having an understanding of the journey that you want to take them on around this demographic and engagement data helps when you're starting out, because you can ask the right questions early and segment later.
Perfect. So that's kind of a nice segue into some of the possibilities you could start to build out with the data integration strategy we just showed a second ago. So, once we've connected and integrated our customer profile data, how do we use it? What are the possibilities here? So again, I'm going to break this back into the 4 classes I just showed a second ago. And let's start off with demographic. Some examples you might pull in there, as Mike mentioned, in terms of asking the right questions on your forums on your site, might be, what industry is your customer in? What is the job title of the user? What's their location? Could also be, what's their company size? But from these, you're able to send out, the journeys and the more targeted marketing you could do could be newsletters that are specifically targeted to industries, promotions offered out to specific geographies, for example, or event follow-ups that are tied back to specific job titles of people who actually attended an event targeted, for example, to marketing practitioners. Secondly, from the engagement data that we're capturing, example being email clicks, URL visits, or forms submitted, we can now start to do things like follow up with a lead directly once they submit a form, for example, to your trial or contact sales request. You could nurture somebody based on them filling out that form to contact a sales rep, and then if they click an email, you can actually accelerate that nurture that says, it looks like you're more interested in how you're engaging with our content. Let us take you through, or would you like to contact a sales rep now? The third is you could obviously do a free trial, for example, or other types of automated onboarding journeys based on them engaging and filling out a free trial form. So a third area, an example of what you can do once you start mapping in your CRM data, for example, Salesforce, you can do everything I just described and start factoring in what is the lead status. So let's say that someone does sign up for a trial and they are assigned to the sales rep who works on the west coast of the country, for example. You can now have an automated outreach email that comes from that sales rep specifically thanking them for signing up for a trial, and once that rep speaks to them and recognizes that they are now a real living opportunity, they can update that status, which in turn drops them out of an automation or a journey. And now you're actually getting pretty involved in terms of being able to do a personalized follow-up with a new lead, and it's fully automated. And then lastly, you map in events, third-party data into your automation platform. For example, what events have they performed in-app? Have they uploaded their first file yet? Have they purchased a product? Have they purchased multiple products? You could map in revenue information from your billing platform, net promoter score from recent net promoter surveys you've sent, or product purchases. Each of these could allow you to do things like everything I just described for trial onboarding, but specialize your language based on if they haven't uploaded their first file on day 2, let's send them some information on how they can go about doing that, or invite them to a demo to learn more about uploading your first file. Or the same for offering proactive support, product recommendations, and so on. This all sounds complicated, but the reality is you step your way into it, starting with demographic data and building your way up. That's the natural way to progress into getting the types of results that we see from increasingly personalized marketing. So what does that mean, and ultimately what does this lead to? Without a doubt, you see that segmented campaigns receive higher click rates and open rates and response rates compared to non-segmented campaigns. This is, as Mike mentioned earlier, like absolutely blunt obvious that if you speak to snowboarders and skiers differently, you're going to get a better response from both sides. More sales, so conversions and sales increase dramatically. We typically see that with every increased level of personalization, for example, during an onboarding journey or a nurture journey, that you see a 20% increase in conversion or sales opportunities. And then third is a higher satisfaction of customers. Again, going back to that InfoSys study from 2015, 59% of consumers are more inclined to purchase from a company that speaks to them in a more personalized manner, and they're less likely to unsubscribe or have a negative impression of your brand. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and transition from the theory, and we're going to move into getting a sneak peek of the new smart segments and talk through our wine time story.
All right, just to be clear, I was enjoying the theory. I was sitting here making myself very comfortable. So we do just want to give you a quick sneak peek today of the new smart segments feature in Autopilot that we've been working on. I will admit that it is incomplete and in beta, but what I want to show you today is just some of the cool use cases and also segmentation that you can achieve with it. And then we'll jump through some examples and go through a lot of what I was talking about.
And so while you're just loading that up there, Mike, I'm going to do one more poll here, which is to ask the question of everybody in the webinar, what is the highest level of profile data that you're currently using for marketing segmentation of those 4 levels we just mentioned a second ago? And if everyone could take a second to respond, it looks like we're getting most of our responses in right now. Looks like at least half the attendees now, 76% voted. We're almost there. We'll wait for about 10 more seconds and then close this out. So it looks like about, so we have a well-segmented audience here. It looks like about 30% have, 38% are using engagement data, about a quarter CRM data, and a quarter all the way up to event-based data. So we have a pretty advanced audience here today.
Yeah, that's great. It's really good to see that. I think that as you step up into the CRM and event-based data and using that in marketing automation, or as we like to say, customer journey marketing, it really does increase the results. People respond better. The results are better, which is pretty clear from the evidence we just saw as well. All right, so jumping into it, I'm in Autopilot today, right now in the Contacts app, and I've gone ahead and just hit create new smart segments. I'm just going to show you a quick example, and I'll actually just literally name this smart segment example. And so for those of you who are existing users, there's quite a substantial change in the way we create segments in the new user interface. And one of the things our product designer internally likes to say is that everything we do is a work in progress. And by that I mean that not what I'm going to show you today is a work in progress. It is slightly because it's a beta, but we're slowly adding features to enable you to segment smarter over time. So the smart segments title is very appropriate. We want to create this really fast, natural experience for you to easily segment and create these great segments to help you create personalized journeys in Autopilot. And that's really important to us. So, we continue to look at ways of improving, speeding it up. And so one of the big things that really came out of the new smart segments is speed. We noticed that people were running smart segments continuously across their databases. They became very addicted to it. And whether you have like 500 contacts or like tens of millions in your database, we wanted to make the experience incredibly fast to quickly see segments. So you can see up in the top right-hand corner here, I've got 2,150 contacts. But the operations I'm going to show you today would work at the exact same speed and rate if you had a database of 5 to 10 million, just as it is in my small case with my wine time database here. So I can use a series of segmentations on either field values, lists that we already have, or other segments to cross-reference them. We can do things like looking if people have submitted forms, visited pages, engaged with certain emails, click, bounce, and various other things. And also use UTM parameters, which we'll be covering later in the demo this morning. So if we just take a quick look at what we can do here, and I'm going to be using this value quite extensively. So I have a value in my database right now that tells me true or false if a user is active or not. So if I hit true, you'll see instantly it snaps and can tell me whether something's true or false in the database, and that number will change, and I'll get a preview below. So it's literally instantaneous. It's quicker than a split second to just run that scan on the database, which is pretty amazing. Our engineers have done a phenomenal job at this. We can look at other criteria as well. Some of the new things we've been working on is around date. So if we look at purchase date here, I can literally say is less than 30 days before today. And just as fast as I queried the active user, I can now see the segment. And if I'm ready, I can go ahead and create the segment, and it'll create the smart segment, which is updated in real time for people that match that criteria. And then I'm able to instantly export that to a CSV as well. So if you're creating snapshots of your data, or you want to do more advanced reporting, you can easily export it as well. So that's a really quick introduction to the new smart segments technology, which is coming really soon in Autopilot. And today's demo is really showing you how to utilize smart segmentation and this technology around everything we do. So let's jump in and have a look at Once Upon a Wine Time. And as Guy said before, we do use this fictional company we've created called Wine Time. It actually has a website and a real logo now that our designer did. So it's one of our 2 example companies. But Wine Time is basically, in imaginary land, a system that helps not only consumers but primarily distributors purchase wine from a number of vineyards. And on the platform, which is a SaaS application, you can subscribe and become a paying customer and then order directly from vineyards to either supply, like say, your restaurant or your liquor store. And so the reason I go deep into the example is I think it helps to really understand the context of why we would be running these use cases. And we've picked use cases that we think apply to a number of businesses out there, whether you're B2C, B2B, small or large. A lot of these use cases we'll show you today around personalization transcend all of those different business categories. So the first is tapping into that demographic data that we talked about earlier. So we're going to show you the most simplistic example here, which is using smart segments to just simply split people based on, in our database today, whether or not when we imported our contacts, we labeled them as a sort of direct buyer or distributor. So let's jump into that example. So I'll go into journeys in Autopilot, and I've already got a journey kind of ready to go and started out. So for those unfamiliar, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, we have triggers, actions, and conditions on the right-hand side here, and we can easily just drag and drop them to start creating this journey of segmentation around delivering an ad for this ebook. So our goal of this campaign is to send one ebook, the opportunity to download an ebook, to our consumer purchases. So this would be more related to a wine catalog of purchases that I can buy at home. And the other one is for distributors, so people who are in restaurants or liquor stores, they can browse through this catalog and see it all. So it's a really popular thing that Wine Time in theory releases every year. So we just want to be able to easily split that in one journey and create 2 segments and send it out. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm using the smart segment trigger to quickly create the segment just to show you how you can do that in the canvas. So we'll create our smart segment here, and I'll call that target distributor list. And then all I'm going to do is something really simple. I'm going to say I want to see the contact field. Actually forgotten the name of what I named the field. So it's relationship type. I made it super confusing for myself. So relationship type, we're going to say is distributor. And you'll see it quickly scan and tell me we have 493 distributors, and here they are. So we'll click create and we'll add it to the shape. We're going to come back to this shape in a minute. Instead, we're going to just start the journey simply with a list trigger, and this is our target list for this this journey. So I'm going to remove this smart segment because I just wanted to use it to create my smart segment, and then I'm going to do something a little bit fancier, which is to use a condition, and then I'm going to find the the smart segment I just created called target distributor list, and then place 2 email shapes, and this is to dispatch our ebook in theory here. So we'll say no, so they're not on our targeted distributor list. They must be a consumer. And then yes, this means they're definitely a consumer. So I've already got an email created for a direct customer, so I'll add that in here. And I've also got an email created for our distributor. And so if I go in and edit this, I would need to go in and customize it. So I could say our annual distributor ebook is here, get your copy free, or something like that. And I could even use the personalization capability in the email as well. So like Michael, our annual distributor ebook is here. And then this would be encouraging them to go to a landing page and download the distributor ebook. So a quick example, this would then lead them into our wine time landing page here, the Ultimate Wine Distributor Handbook. So it all aligns nicely. And then we'd have a separate landing page for our consumers as well. But just a really basic introduction to creating a segment and then using that segment as a condition in a journey to split the journey and change it based on a very simple parameter. And so as we go today, we're going to get more and more advanced. So that's our first example of how to use smart segments.
And this is an example of using that first stage of data available to you, which is basic demographic data.
So our next example is around engagement, which is the second sort of tranche that Guy showed this morning. So it says, nurture ebook downloaders who came from Facebook. So what we actually want to do here is something a little bit more sophisticated. After people download this ebook, they've either come from 2 sources. They've either come from email, so our email to our existing target list where we've said, hey, if they're a distributor, we want to send them to this particular landing page. But we've also got an ad, a retargeting ad running on Facebook. Under our Facebook campaign. And what we want to do is send a completely different ebook based on the fact they came from Facebook. So if they came from Facebook, we want to send them one ebook that is more related to the distributor content we're advertising on Facebook. And if they didn't, we want to send them the generic ebook here. So let's go ahead and show you sort of how this works. So we've got the wine time landing page, and we want to use the form submission to start our journey. So we're going to go and grab here the form submitted trigger and quickly just set up this form. So we'll put in the URL and we'll call this ebook download form. And so Autopilot will go and scan that page, which has our tracking code on it, and say we have 5 fields. We'll hit continue. And then there is a unique field down the bottom, which is how did you hear about wine time? And so we'll just add a field I already have created called how heard and map that field into another field in our Autopilot database. So I'll click continue and add to shape, and we're ready to capture the form. Now this is where the segmentation will occur. So let's jump back into contacts and quickly create a segment called Facebook campaign. And what this will do is use that UTM parameter I talked about earlier. So we'll go ahead and select UTM parameter, and we'll say campaign is Facebook. So this means they came from Facebook. Now, there's only 3 results at the moment, but over time, remember, a smart segment is continuously searching your database and looking for people who meet this criteria. So we only have 3 now, but we might have 100 or 1,000 later on. And so we can continue to use the smart segments to reference people that meet that criteria in the database. So we have 3 people, Pete, Guy, and I right now, who have come from Facebook, because apparently we're big on Facebook. So back into our journey now, and we have the form submitted trigger, and then we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to grab the condition, and we're going to say, if they came from our Facebook campaign, we're going to send them, 1 email here. So yes, and if they didn't, we're going to send them the generic distributor download book. So I have just 2 ebooks I've created here. Put the wrong one. So I can show you a trick. I'm just going to delete the outcomes and put the right one up here. So this is no, so they're not from our Facebook campaign, and then yes, and then, oops, and then I'll just search for my ebook, which is our distributor ebook.
Facebook?
Oh, Facebook, God. Getting myself confused. Okay, great. So we've split the journey now. So our Facebook people are going to get the Facebook ebook, and now non-Facebook users are going to get the distributor. And so those unfamiliar with UTMs, they sort of look like this, and you can do a Google search on them. They're incredibly powerful. So you can put these on ads, and Autopilot will actually track all the different touches of a UTM on a contact and store this data. And it allows you to then query it and say, who came from my Facebook ad campaign? Who came from Google AdWords? And so we won't dive too deep into it today, but it's a really great way of marketing and personalizing touches using UTMs and understanding where people came from.
And one point I'd make while you're describing that is, I mean, one thing we do here that we see a lot of people doing amongst our customers is using UTMs to tag your trials or your signups based on their initial sign-up source. So if someone did, for example, click a Facebook ad or a Google AdWords ad or an ad roll, for example, then you can actually attribute that sign up back to that initial source and at least get a sense of how much of your efforts in each of those different channels is resulting in actual leads and then conversions downstream. So it's another sort of powerful application of the smart segments with the UTM.
Yeah, being able to quickly look up and see which contacts came from Facebook and then export that and see that against a campaign is just so incredibly powerful. So let's look at after we've sort of split the journey based on personalization. So after they've downloaded this ebook, we really just want to send them some basic nurturing emails to try and keep them engaged after they've sort of read the initial ebook. So we're going to give them 14 days to do that. And then I'm just going to build just the most simple drip nurture imaginable. And I'm going to run both of those different segments into the same outcome. So, you know, we split them here because that's important. And then just to ease our workload as a marketer, we bring them back into the same journey again for a little while. And then in another 14 days, so we'll put in 14 days here, I'm going to send them another email, and that's going to be about growing their distribution business. So I've got 2 nurture emails now. So tips for distributing wine, which is really relevant to these people as a group, and then growing your distribution business. So 2 pretty powerful pieces of content that are really related to the ebook that they've just downloaded. So they've got this personalized experience, we've engaged with that, and then we're outreaching them to things that they share in common that we can send to both of them. So on that note, let's look at our next example as we get a bit deeper with this use case here. So what's happening now is after we've got them to download the ebook and then we're nurturing them, it's likely that we're going to see some engagement data that we can then use with our CRM data to create an even more highly personalized experience for this customer and keep them on this really targeted journey. So we're going to use some Salesforce examples here, but you can actually integrate with a number of different CRMs through our API or through Zapier to achieve exactly what I'm showing you here. If you don't even use the CRM and you're relying on Autopilot as your CRM today, that's great. You can actually use things like notification emails and even Slack chats if you really want to deliver the same kind of automation of messages I'm going to show you here. So let's look at, go back to this nurture and see how we can start to use some of that engagement data to interact with our CRM data as well. So in these nurture emails, if these people start clicking on them, it shows they're pretty interested and engaged. So they're either clicking on tips for distributing wine or growing your distribution business. So we know they're pretty engaged. And you know, if we had a lot more time, I would show you how to build this out further and not be as aggressive. But we're going to get a little bit aggressive here because I sort of want to show you what that looks like. So we've got the check Salesforce field. And what this is going to do is, using the outcome wheel on the email, if they click in on this send email, we're going to, or either one for that matter, so we'll say on click for both. And then what we want to do is check the lead record and the status field in Salesforce and say contains the word open. And so for those that don't use Salesforce, all this means is the lead just hasn't been touched by a person before. And so in normal circumstances, if we weren't using CRM personalization, what might happen here is they get an automated email from someone that they might already be talking to, and that's a horrible experience. It makes the company look, terrible, and it makes the automation look bad as well, because all of a sudden you're getting this robot email and you know it's a robot instead of being able to engage with the person. So all we're doing is running a really simple check and saying, hey, is a salesperson currently working with this person? And if they're not, we should alert them, because this is a really compelling event. They've been clicking on this information, they've taken this engagement action, so we should really engage them. So we're going to do a few things here. We're going to automate a simple outreach from the salesperson in our organization, because we want to talk to them about ordering more wine as a distributor on Wine Time. So I've built a simple touch here called AE Outreach, and it looks like this. So it says, hi there, but if we know their name, it'll say like, hi Mike in this case. I saw you downloaded our wine distribution ebook. This catalog has helped grow other distributors' profits by 32%. The wine is that good. Should be great, I think. That's probably good is not the best word there. Do you have time for a call this week to discuss your purchasing strategy? So it automates that outreach based on this compelling event. And then what we're also going to do is go ahead and we can assign the lead. So we can say, yes, if it's still open, let's assign the lead, and let's also add a task. Now keep in mind, if you don't use Salesforce, you could easily check the exact same fields internally and use things like the notification email to notify someone on your team to reach out to them. And if you use something like Slack, you could also send a Slack message onto a channel to alert your team that you should engage this person because they're really interested. So both are great techniques and work just as well. So I'll go ahead and assign the lead to myself. We can also do things like adding an optional source and changing the status. And why changing the status here might be really important and moving it into working is it will stop this personalization condition actually ever checking yes again. So we now have forced an engagement with a salesperson, and why that's super important, the task might be call this person. So why that's really important is because now if they go and click this email and they've already clicked this, and we've already assigned it and done this outreach, it's not going to happen again.
I think this is really powerful to show how well your automation and your outreach emails can work with the status that your reps have in terms of working with somebody already, and like you said, not have that awkward experience where they're already working with somebody. Question for you, Mike, is what happens if they haven't created a lead, for example, already, and there is no lead in Salesforce before you reach out to the customer and the user clicks one of those emails? Can you just go ahead and assign a lead directly at that point?
Yeah, so you could easily assign a lead. I'm making the assumption we're actually pulling this list in from Salesforce already, like we've got our database in sync, but that's a really good point and something that could confuse people. So in that case, it would be very simple. I could assign the lead first and then run the condition check. So I just kill all these outcomes, and you can see it's pretty easy if you want to change it. So you could say on click here, go and assign the lead, and then check. And the cool thing is, there's another thing that people that have done this before might be thinking is, well, how do you, if you assign a lead, won't that change the status? And the great thing is we have this option, which is keep current assignment if it exists. So it won't override the salesperson's process working with the lead, and that's incredibly important. I mean, with marketing and sales, being in different teams, this is a really brilliant way of aligning everyone together by not interfering with their sales process, but also being able to use salespeople as a marketer in your sales process. And again, if you're not using Salesforce, you can totally do this with notifications and simulate the exact same experience, but it's a way of actually putting real people in your organization into the customer journey, inserting them into the conversation and being able to continue the journey on as a marketer. I think that's super exciting because it doesn't do away with human touch and interaction with people where it's important and where there's a compelling call to action to do so. In this case, they're being nurtured and they click something, and that's a really basic example, but it's a really powerful one as well.
And I think this is a great example in terms of a real-world application. We did a webinar, not so long ago with our customer live chat, and what they're doing using an exactly workflow like you've shown here is they actually are adding into their lead nurturing base customers or visitors who engage with them in actual chat on their site, and they do exactly what you just showed here, which is If somebody is actually asking sales-related questions, they add them to a list. They then run through in Salesforce, look and see if they're already a lead or if they're already in a working status with somebody, and if not, trigger that outreach just like you've shown here, and that's really been an effective way for them to grow.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, I think what we're showing you today is like, semi-advanced in terms of the segmentation we're not only doing, but then the customer journey that we're running. But if it seems intimidating initially to you, the best way of actually seeing this play out is to just slowly build on itself. Start with something incredibly basic, and then as you feel more advanced and more comfortable, start to add more shapes and advance the journey. There's no pressure to get this right the first time, and I see that's where a lot of people slip up with segmentation and personalization is they're like, oh, we have to have all the data in, and we have to have every field syncing in our database that we've ever thought of. But honestly, if you look at those meaningful splits in the customer journey, the meaningful segmentations and the meaningful moments where you want to highly personalize, what you're really looking for is these sort of I/O outcomes, like in our case, distributor, consumer, active, non-active, purchased in a certain period or not. It's very I/O, and by I/O I just mean two separate, clearly defined outcomes. The market, as I see, struggling, and I think for a lot of the reason the industry has just been so aggressive about having a handle on all of this data, get all this data in and then do these complex things, is you end up just not executing and not creating personalized experiences, and then going back to the point of least friction, which means you end up batching and blasting or looking for these silver bullets that I mentioned earlier. And so just being really thoughtful about these customer journeys and building them out slowly, starting with a simple goal, and then advancing over time is a really great way to approach it, and it's always a great way of approaching it when you're working in a marketing team where you really want to prove results early instead of trying to get to the finish line. It is a journey in and of itself to create a journey. That's
nice.
Pretty meta.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at our next example. So this one is definitely more advanced. So this is talking about how to use that event-based data. And so what we want to do in this use case is help users become more active if they've been inactive in our wine time ordering applications. So let me show you how this works. And I'm going to show you some unique ways of communicating beyond just email as well here. So we want to quickly go and create a new journey because that canvas is getting a little bit big. So we are going to use the smart segment trigger here. And I'm going to quickly talk you through all the options on this trigger because when you're starting out, they can be a little bit confusing. So all we do is go onto the smart segment trigger here and say we want to add a new smart segment. And this one we're going to call inactive 30 days. And so the whole purpose of this is to actually look for people in our database who are active. And I showed you this at the start of the webinar. So we want to say active user is false, so they're not active. But then we want to bring time into the equation as well, because if you've signed up in wine time in the last 30 days, you want to give them a chance to get up and running. You don't want to engage them in a journey or put them in a journey that's saying, hey, you're not active yet, which literally hits them the moment they sign up to your service or your application or your e-commerce store. You don't want to hit them and be like, after they do their first order, send them another email being like, you haven't ordered in a while. Again, not a very great experience. So what we need to do is incorporate time here as well. So we're going to look at the purchase date, and this is not the purchase date their last purchase. This is the purchase date of them subscribing to our wine time SaaS sort of ordering system. And then we're going to use another field, which is more than X days before today. And then we're going to say 30. And you'll see this instantly figure out a segment here. So we've got 918 people are not active, and they purchased more than 30 days ago. So in that 30-day window, it stops people in this segment getting hit by this journey who are just getting up and running, and we want to give them time to incubate. Now, when we were talking through earlier on this, Guy, you made a really good point, which is 30 days is a big chunk of time to get someone active, and a pretty big danger zone in a SaaS company. Maybe not so for e-commerce, but in a SaaS company. Do you want to explain sort of how we think about that internally? I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we typically see that, within the first 72 hours of someone signing up for your service, that's a critical time where the very motivated users will launch, quickly get themselves configured and start performing best practices. But those who are slow starters, meaning they maybe don't have a priority, they're really busy, or they can't figure out your service, that's a really critical period of time in which you want to actually nudge them towards proactive support or assistance. How do you upload that first file or connect your first integration? And so, you can imagine other segments, which we won't go into today, you can actually use to do a proactive tip or an assistant journey for that first week, for example, in your app to get as many people up and running as possible.
Yeah, I think that's the thing to be aware of here. You've really got to suit these numbers that I'm throwing around today to your own use case and business. But hopefully by having insight into these timeframes, that gives you an understanding of how to really think about that internally. So let's go ahead, create that segment, inactive 30 days, and then let's quickly take a look at our options here to start this journey. So there's 3 really powerful options here. The first one is super simple. It says add all contacts in this segment. So every contact currently, right now that we just did, those 918, would just be added. And then after that, no one would ever be added again. But of course, it's the customer journey here. It's not batch and blasting. So that's really good if you just want to do a one-time send or start people on a journey at a specific window in time. But there's some other great options as well. So add contacts who enter this segment in the future. So you may not want to hit the people already in the segment, but people who are newly meeting that criteria after this point in time when we hit publish, we could just add those new people in. So that might be people, as a great example, you've got a free trial on your website and you've built a really nice onboarding program for them, but then you create a new journey for people in the future that you want to put through onboarding and you want to stop the other one. You don't want to put all the people who meet that criteria through the same journey because they'll be pretty angry at you, and again, not very personalized, not very targeted. So that's where a good example of where that would be an option. But the most popular option is this one, add all contacts in this segment. So take all the people that are currently in it and add any contacts who meet this criteria in the future. So we're definitely going to choose that one because we want to target all the people who are inactive greater than 30 days and all the people that are inactive greater than 30 days in the future as well, because we want this journey to run forever because it's going to make us a lot of money by reactivating people who aren't active. So we're going to go ahead and send them an email, and the email I've created is about needing help, and I clearly didn't fill that one in, whoops. But a great example of content in that email is a personal reach out from the person they were dealing with prior, and you can get that data from either your CRM or internally through Autopilot. Or it could just be a personal outreach from, say, the CEO if these are high deals and you want to interact directly with customers. I do this often. I send outreaches from myself based on our customers meeting certain criteria where I do want to engage them. And then a heads-up message. So this is an in-app or on-website message that you can add. And this one is the same need help from the same person. So we get 2 opportunities to contact them. And I'll just give you a preview. I don't want to go into how to set this up, because we're going to run out of time. But this message is a great example. So Mike, I see you haven't made an order. Do you need help getting your wine time account set up? Schedule a working session. So it's a great way of automating. And then I could link this button to a service like Calendar, a scheduling service where they could automatically schedule a time with me. And then my calendar, as a salesperson, just starts filling up with all these great opportunities of people that I can activate. And that's something we do internally at Autopilot as well. So then what I want to do is just add a quick timer here. So after we send the first email, I'm going to give them 20 days to get active because, our people aren't very responsive. So I want to make sure that they have sufficient time because our buying cycle is a bit longer. And then I'm just going to take the exact same segment that we just created, inactive 30 days, and run that check again. Because if they've become active, again, I don't want to look silly here. I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to send another outreach to help, which would be a little bit more aggressive, being like, hey, I really genuinely want to help you order wine because wine is great. And then we could add a task to the CRM as well. So after we send the email, we could notify the rep to contact this account regarding their first order. So it could be highly contextual as well. And so that's just an example of a re-engagement using that event-based data because we know they're not active yet. And that's such again, before you don't have to model all this data and it's very I/O. It's like active, inactive, and we can create these amazing journeys as a result of that information.
So this is a great sort of level 4 events-based customer success track, really, is the way I would summarize it. You're engaging customers who haven't been active after a period of time. We know we want them to, they purchased for a reason, we need to help them out, and you've built a nice flow here, a nice journey to be able to re-engage them in the system.
You know what I love about it too is that so many companies sit around and go, okay, we have all of these inactive people, what are we going to do about it? So they create a campaign and they batch and blast them and they're like, please become active, or cart abandonment. They're like, our sales have dropped, so we better send this one-time blast. The brilliant thing about setting this up, which most people don't realize until they do it, is this is going to run and just start scheduling time in people's calendars and continue to ensure you're making money from otherwise lost opportunities. It's an absolute no-brainer, and if you aren't running journeys in your business today like this, you are insane. You are missing out on a huge chunk of revenue. If 60% of users who sign up or users who buy initially and then never buy again, don't repurchase, you're missing all of those people. That's 60%, and instead you're going out and spending probably $100 or $300 on a new lead when you have all of these people that have previously engaged with you. So to me, honestly, it's an absolute no-brainer, and if you're listening today and need help setting this up, I personally vow to help you. I'll take 1% of the profit, maybe 5%.
Which is a good transition to the last journey here, which is if that one's about helping your customers and buyers be successful, what about all those people, and this is a common thing we hear from new customers coming to us as well as our existing client base, who come to us and they have won a customer, they've gone to all that effort to get a first-time purchase, for example, through my online shop, and then they haven't purchased for, say, 30 days or maybe 90 days, and you want to bring those people back.
Yeah, this is another great example, and this starts off very similar. Let's just go and remove this and use the same canvas here. So again, we're going to start off with a smart segment trigger, create a new segment, and then we're going to call this segment a name that will be really obvious to us, that we can use again in the future as well. So this one is last purchase greater than 30 days. So it's just readable, an easy segment to refer to internally all the time, and keep using this. So again, we want to make sure that they're an active user, right, is true, because if they're not an active user, they've never done an order with us. So, trying to get them to do another order would make us look a little bit silly. And then the second thing we're going to do is query the last purchase date, which we're feeding into Autopilot as well. And in this time, we're going to use is more than X days before today, and we're going to say I guess last 30 days again. And this time we'll get 380 matches, because what we're now looking for is people that haven't purchased in the last 30 days but are actively using the Wine Time SaaS application. So they're in there browsing these great winery catalogs, but they're not actually making any purchase orders, and they haven't in the last 30 days. So we want to engage them specifically. You can see my brilliant Twitter notifications coming up there. So we have the smart segment trigger now, easily readable, last purchase greater than 30 days. We're going to select that option again, add all contacts in this segment and any contacts who enter it in the future, because we want this as well to run forever, because it's going to make us a lot of money. And then what we're going to do is send an email called recovery. And our recovery email is really just trying to get them to order. So I've got an example here of this. So to be like, hi Guy, I noticed you hadn't ordered in the last month. If you're thinking about increasing inventory soon, we have a special promotion for VIPs for 20% off orders over 5,000 this month. Use this coupon. If you're interested, and I'm also happy to schedule a call to share which labels are getting the highest margins for other customers. Do you have time this week? So again, the messaging in this is really bringing it back to the core problem that you're trying to solve for these people, which is they want to really increase their margins and do better business by distributing your wine. So that's the sort of pain point for them, so we want to remind them of that and then give them an opportunity by saying, hey, if you order in the next 30 days, we're going to give you 25% off, which, again, if we go out and try and acquire new customers and leads, I bet you our cost to acquire a new customer is going to be way more than this discount we're going to have to offer on our inventory. So again, no-brainer, economically makes sense, and I don't know why people don't do this everywhere.
So there's a nice corollary to this one as well, which I've seen people use with a lot of success, which is, let's say they have purchased in the last 30 days and they have been active as well. request you could do is say, hey, thank you for signing up for us and making a purchase. Would you mind doing a quick review for us on Yelp or on G2 Crowd or on GetApp? And those types of review requests, which again, to your point, you can set on Autopilot and you can have just consistently updating and populating, can drive tremendous results for companies and really help you build your online reach and following. So it's another tactic.
It's such a good example. I mean, a lot of, like this example, sort of negative behavior, like you're not purchasing and so we're trying to recover it. But then thinking the inverse of that, the positive behavior. So we know if someone scores us high through an NPS survey, we ask them, which some of you may have experienced this, we ask you to go and review us on G2 Crowd or a service that's really helpful and influential to us in winning more customers. So it helps us grow our business. And that's also automated. If you love us, we try and, ask you if you'd kindly sort of go and review us. But if you don't, then I actually do send a personal reach out saying, like, I really want to know exactly why, things went wrong and how we can improve. And I take that really seriously.
Well, this is awesome. This has been a great series of 5 journeys here that show the ways in which you can use that customer identity record to build out increasing levels of personalization. And so before we run out of time here, I just want to make sure we have time for a couple of questions from the audience. And there's been a good question that's come through because we've spoken a lot today about you can use data of your sales rep or what they've done in an application or what email they clicked or form filled out. And maybe, Mike, I'll direct this to you. One question someone said is that, in the levels of the personalization, like CRM and event data, how do I set that kind of stuff up? Like, how do I get this into Autopilot? Is that something that I can do myself as a marketer, or do I need dev support for that? Like, what does this process look like? Because it sounds pretty complicated.
Yeah, I think definitely when we talk about engagement and demographic information, the brilliant thing is those sort of basics of where you can start as a marketer to really prove value in your organization are already sort of baked in. So the demographic information, we're going to help you with that if you don't have any by applying the full contact data, but also really, I mean, hopefully you've been accumulating some great data as well. And then the event-based data, just by simply adding that tracking code to your website, we're now tracking page visits, clicks, you can even track form submits, and then send emails that you're sending through Autopilot. So start to look at that engagement data. If you are using Salesforce CRM, which I know quite a few of our customers do use it, we do have that seamless one-click integration where you can connect to all of those fields, map them, and start utilizing that data as well. So if you have other connected apps into your CRM already, you can utilize that data by combining it in. When we talk about event-based data, there's a few different ways of approaching it. I'm probably going to run out of time to go into it too deep. Suffice to say that we do have a great integration with segment.com, which allows you to pass event data through. And if you have developers on your team, a lot of them don't mind using it. But we also have a very simple API where you can, just do batch updates and say, okay, here is all the people that use our application or bought from our store, and here's a few of those like IO fields I keep talking about. So last purchase date, active, inactive, and just giving the marketer some simple fields by aggregating up that data. And those kind of investments do take a little bit of setup, and they seem daunting at first, but like I said to you, they're so powerful. You're missing like 60% of possible revenue in some of these cases, and to be able to win that back and not have to spend that money on continuously trying to acquire new customers to offset that lost opportunity, it just makes total economic sense. So there's just a few of the ways that you can do it. There's also Zapier that we have a great integration with. So if you have other applications, you can also zap in information based on things changing in other applications, which works well with a number of the other smaller CRMs that are out there in the market that are also great when you're starting out as well.
I think from a marketing perspective, Mike, and you've said it multiple times today, I think it's the key point, is that starting simple is the way to go with this. Being able to get in place a basic onboarding journey, a follow-up to a lead journey, sending newsletters, for example, and then working in 1 or 2 points of personalization that have dramatic effects. We showed a customer last year that just by virtue of whether or not someone had logged into the app and or had shared their first set of photos and the interaction of those 2 event-based data points and splitting them into 4 groups based on activity, we're able to have a dramatic increase. I think they cut their onboarding time by half in the first week, and that was with Narrative, our hardware wearable company. they were able to do that just by passing 2 data points into Autopilot. So big results. There are some quick wins you can get out of this. So listen, I think we're up to the hour here. Mike, I want to thank you for the awesome demo today and thank our awesome audience for being with us. We hope you appreciate getting an overview of the upcoming smart segments as well as some practical applications as to how you can use them to get some quick results, frankly, and move into being customer journey marketers.
Yeah, one final thing I would add is most of the smart segment capability you saw today is actually in the product today. This is a new and improved version, so the existing version works just as well and can be utilized today. But we do have some really exciting updates that we're pushing out over the next few months, which I think you're going to love.
Awesome. And one other point is we do have some events coming up soon. We have our Autopilot launch party in San Francisco, or our anniversary party at the end of the month. We have an event in Vancouver at TractionConf for Mike's going to be presenting. I'm going to be running a workshop in London on the 22nd of June, and we're opening our Sydney office on the 8th of June. So busy month here at Autopilot. Would love to interact with any and all of you.
Cool. Thanks so much for having us, everyone.
Thank you.